The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Welcome back to the Nova Society, a space where dialogue deepens understanding and civic responsibility comes to life. I'm Dr. Mark Bound, joined by our regular panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon. Together, we'll unpack the stories that matter most, exploring the headlines, the history, and the big ideas shaping today's conversations. Let's dive in and hear what the panel has for us today.
Today we have a question from Mark, who writes to us from Tampa, Florida. And Mark writes, Prime Minister Netanyahu has now publicly rejected Trump's 15-point plan, and watching the video, the dismissal looked like a direct and unmistakable rebuke. It raises real questions about the effectiveness and relevance of Trump's Board of Peace, especially at a moment when American support for Israel is showing signs of strain and the war with Iran is beginning to resemble a long, grinding conflict with no clear end. So here's what I'd like the panel to consider. Is this a strategic miscalculation by Netanyahu and Israel? Do they truly have the luxury of openly rejecting a proposal from one of their most important and increasingly unpredictable allies? And more broadly, what does this public break signal about the future of U.S.-Israel relations, especially as both countries navigate a volatile regional war and shifting political landscapes at home? Those are excellent questions, Mark. Thank you. And I have a question. Remember from before, Netanyahu was saying, oh, we want to break completely from the United States and we don't want to take any more money from them and this and that. What happened to that? We're still sending Israel aid and weapons and whatnot. What happened to Netanyahu's big announcement that they were going to separate themselves from the U.S. and whatnot? I haven't heard any more about that.
Yeah, nor have I. I think that I don't know what the schedule is for getting aid from the United States, so I don't know whether they've recently gotten any or how it works. But clearly there's, look, I mean, Netanyahu is probably Trump's equivalent when it comes to being an asshole. And you know, the two of them really do deserve each other. They all the memes that they put out there, those little reels, cartoon reels that people made and Trump put out there of the two of them enjoying a drink on the beach at Gaza while hotels go up around them and the Palestinian people are basically servants, which is the same thing, by the way, that he did to the population of Atlantic City while he was laundering money for the Russian mob. The Netanyahu, you know, is in a strange spot when it comes to that, because he's always been Trump's guy in Israel. And, you know, like any relationship, there are definitely going to be limits. What I have seen, I think recently, is probably going to change. And give me a little rope here, if you don't mind. I think that all the moves that Netanyahu has made since the ceasefire, right? Since that phase one of the ceasefire was like, you know, to stop fighting. Phase two was going to be disarming Hamas and trying to get some kind of normal relations going, getting back to the way it was before October 7th. And I think 1,200 Palestinians have been killed in that time. So as ceasefires go, it's not like what we would ordinarily think of as a ceasefire. But I think what was always waiting in the wings was the very thing that triggered the attack on October 7th, which was the announcement that Netanyahu made at the UN on September 23rd, 2023, which you can see on YouTube if you want to, where he announced normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia with the promise that the Palestinians were going to get their own state and that Israel would be withdrawing at some point or another from the West Bank, and that Saudi Arabia was guaranteeing the peace between Israel and the Palestinians, and that deal, was done. And 2 weeks later, Hamas attacked, slaughtered all these people, committed all kinds of atrocities, and that deal has been gone since then. I believe that Trump has tried to revive that deal because it was in the best interest of both countries. But now, on Friday, this weekend, Saudi Arabia announced a new deal with Turkey and Pakistan and Egypt expected to follow. That will be, it's called the Mecca Accords or the Mecca Peace Arrangement or something like that, which is supposed to be a NATO-like treaty between these now 3, later 4, who knows how many after that, countries, that if one of them is attacked, they are all attacked and they all fight together. And this changes everything for Netanyahu. This changes the calculation that you have to make when you look at the Middle East and you try to say, we're going to, Israel and the Sunni Muslim countries against Iran, right? It's no longer like that. Turkey and Israel have been antagonists for a while now. And I don't see that peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel going forward at this point. So Netanyahu is really like up a creek without a paddle. And I don't know how it's going to end up for Israel in this thing. But they have said that they cannot allow Iran to continue the way they're going. They needed regime change and they didn't get it. And they're in a really bad spot because there's no way Israel, unless they have a whole bunch of nuclear weapons that they're willing to drop on top of Iran, there is no way that they have the power to usurp this regime, with like ground forces and stuff. I mean, they may figure out some other way, which would be very Israeli. But right now it doesn't look like that's possible. The United States just wants out. Trump just wants out. That's all. And he wants, he wants to turn his attention back to Gaza rather than deal with Iran anymore. He thinks he might be able to score some kind of deal in Gaza that would take the sting of Iran off of him, right? So he's looking for other ways to get a win somewhere. And it's not happening. Israel's not letting it happen. So it's got to be frustrating for him. And their friendship, which has always been transactional, is now, probably at a low point. Netanyahu's been here before, but he's never gotten anybody to go along with him the way Trump has. And now Trump is finding himself in a position where he's either doubling down on Netanyahu or he's opposing him. And there is nothing I would put past Trump. There is nothing I would put past Trump. He will change sides in a war. He's done it before, and he'll do it again. And Netanyahu has to be careful because Trump could become the most pro-Palestinian president in American history, and Netanyahu will really be screwed then. And they need to watch it.
Yeah. If we thought that Israel was in a bad neighborhood before, if this treaty that makes like a NATO-like alliance in the Middle East a reality comes to pass, you're really in a bad neighborhood. Because I can tell you who they're not going to allow to be in that agreement: Israel.
Right.
And so Israel, again, we've said this before, bad neighborhood, and nobody wants them there as far as their neighbors are concerned. And this basically neuters their ability, or is designed to neuter their ability to influence any to influence anything in the region. So, is this a miscalculation by Netanyahu? First of all, let's look at who's on the board of peace. We're not talking a lot of friendly people there. So, Netanyahu, I'm going to tell you right now, is in a bad spot, because here's what Scott's very right. Netanyahu is on the level of piece of shit that Trump's on. They both have their own agenda. Now, if they can use each other to achieve the agenda that they have, yeah, they'll be buddy-buddy. Again, transactional, no problem. But here's what we're in. And Scott, once again, I totally agree. Trump needs out of Iran. Trump is hoping that I'm just going to declare victory, pull out. All my MAGA morons are going to believe me and say, oh, yeah, look how great we did. And that'll be that. That'll be that. If I can get it through a peace deal, it makes me look better, especially with this thing with it and Hamas. Gotten so complicated, Netanyahu can't really navigate through this. This is really, and I'll agree with Scott. This is a game changer for the region, because it's starting out at 3, and yes, Egypt is going to be in there, and you're going to see a lot of other countries. And there's going to be one person that's going to be excluded from being able to get into Israelis. And yes, support for Israel in the United States has declined considerably if you look at the polls where the polls sit. And a lot of that, I would say, is the fault of Netanyahu and the fault of Trump. Those two have probably done more to destroy American support for Israel than any two people since Israel's existence. I mean, they just have done everything wrong. Everything wrong. When Israel was attacked in October, that terrible October day, Scott and I both sat back and said, normally the world would give Israel 2 weeks to clean this thing up, and we were wrong as usual, because we're really terrible at this. 2 days, and the world was already condemning Israel. Imagine if that happened, and this agreement of attack on one is an attack on all exists.
Was that hamstring you or what?
Yeah, abso-damn-lutely. Absolutely. And the question is going to be, who are they going to let in? Are they going to let in the Palestinians? What does this mean for the West Bank, which, by international law, does not belong to the Israel? It truly is. This is probably a bigger story right now than any other story. The possibility of this act coming to pass, because this is one of those things that, yeah, Israel, you're going to need some support, and the United States, well, we're not really all that reliable right now, and for our own making, for our own reasons, you're not going to get the Russians and the Chinese to help you. And let's face it, even the Europeans are starting to say, whoa, maybe this is too much for us. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing to see. But I don't think Netanyahu has miscalculated. I don't think there's many calculations left for him. When you see this new agreement possibly coming down the road, I think any other consideration that Netanyahu has, any other consideration that he has, I think has to go out the window. And he's got to be sitting his ass down and say, whoa, how can I stop this or mitigate what this could be? And there's his problem.
Yeah,
there's the question of the day.
Netanyahu is making the classic mistake of trying to kill his way to peace. and that has never worked anywhere. And all you do is you create longer term problems for yourself. In this case, there is an actual diplomat on the scene, Nikolai Mladenov, who's a Bulgarian politician who's on the board of peace and did the negotiating for this 15-point plan. And he has emphasized that Israel is under no obligation to do anything until Hamas makes the next move, which is to disarm, and that they're going to have verification process and everything that you would want to have, and then and only then Israel has to withdraw from Gaza. The good people of Israel will be voting in a few months, and they need to vote Netanyahu out. Netanyahu has failed in a Trumpian fashion. Netanyahu failed on October 7th. He was caught presumably with his pants down and not aware that this was going to go on. He has tried to basically tame the leopard, and the leopard ate his face. And he really should have been held to account right then and there. I don't know how Israel's people, I guess, they rallied behind him, but they really should have blamed him and said, you know what, we need to get rid of this guy. We need a new regime in here. This is the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, and it would happen on his watch when he was responsible for it, protecting the Israeli people. He failed miserable at that, and he should have been ousted from that. Israel has ousted leaders before for much, much less than that. And they need to do that. The same way I would say, Trump here needs to resign. Like his own party should be coming up to the White House and going, look, you have failed miserably and you need to resign. Let somebody else please take this, because as long as you're in power, the world will be a less safe place for everyone. It's probably not going to happen, because I don't think that any Republicans have the stones to do it. But that's what, traditionally in the world would have happened. That's what politics leads to when failure is so prominent. You get rid of these people, you get rid of these leaders, and you find new people. So I don't know how long. I didn't see any rumblings about this, Mark. I don't know if you did. I didn't see anything that indicated that Turkey and Saudi Arabia were going to sign this deal. I had no idea that Turkey and Pakistan were even talking together. I know that there's been a lot of problems between Turkey and Israel of late, and I also know that Erdogan, who has now been in power way too long, and people of the world, like 10 years is enough. Netanyahu being the prime minister for 20 years is wrong. Erdogan, wrong. Trump, wrong. Xi, wrong. Putin, wrong. Like all these leaders, once they've been in there more than 10 years, begin to corrupt massively and turn into something that they shouldn't be, that their countries should not allow them to be. And so Erdogan's dream, like Putin, is to revive a pre-World War I empire. Right? Putin wants a Russian empire and needs Ukraine to do it. If he wants to be Christian, we've talked about that before, right? If he has a Russian empire with only the stands in it, which presumably he would get by threatening them or something, then it's a Muslim majority country, and he doesn't want that. So he needs Ukraine, with its vast population of Christians, to join with Russia and become an empire together. Okay. Erdogan wants the Ottoman Empire back, without the Ottomans, but with Turkey as the lead in the Middle East, taking a lead role in the Middle East. And this is how he's going to go about getting it. He's going to make peace. He's going to do basically what Nasser tried to do with Pan-Arabism in the 1960s, trying to lead the Arab world from Cairo, which included at one time Syria, which included at one time, I think, Lebanon and Jordan. in his power base. It fell apart because he abused his power, and the countries went back to being independent again. But that's what Erdogan's dream is, and this is how he's going to go about getting that dream. And there's no room for Israel in that dream. The Ottoman Empire can't tolerate a Jewish state in its midst, and so there is no good outcome here for Netanyahu. He must be relieved of command and somebody else to come in and try to make peace as best they can through peaceful means rather than by murdering people. And I don't see any other way around it.
Yeah. And no, this really just came up on the radar, this idea of these three countries getting together. And, a lot of times that's when you got to be really careful, when you don't hear a whole heck of a lot about something. And there's just I was very surprised that there wasn't bigger coverage by the major news networks. And that includes the news networks of Germany and England and France, the Italians. Nobody's really talking a lot about this, like this is a serious plan. But the fact is that if it is a plan, and if it does come to fruition, it will have serious consequences. And these are the kinds of things that kind of sneak up on us a little bit. You don't hear a lot about it. It's kind of just, a little bit, whispers here and there. And then the next thing you know, you're faced with something that you basically can't deal with. And I think that that's something that if I'm Israel, I'm worried. Just the fact that they're talking about this makes me worried. And I know that this is kind of off the topic, Mark, down there in Tampa, I think you are. But the fact is that this is something that needs to be in the calculations of Israel when they're dealing with the United States. And that's something they really do have to think about, because if something like this was to come to be reality, they're going to need the United States more than they ever did. Now, back to your question, Brooklyn. This wasn't like a spigot being turned off. I'm not dealing with this. Was going to be over time. So it wasn't like there was a spigot. And as far as what the plan was, let's remember when he said this. We're talking six months ago about that he was saying this. Conditions have changed quite a bit, not only for Israel, but now with this whisper of this thing going on, the fact as bad as the war in Iran's going for the United States, and how badly we're being depleted, which we'll get into the next episode. All different kinds of calculations. The fact that maybe Trump is beginning to look a little bit more favorably toward Ukraine. Maybe. Who knows? I mean, let's face it. He could change his mind as quickly as he changes his diaper. We don't know. But the fact is that all these calculations, the calculation you have today may be completely different than tomorrow. And I think that this is a very good sign that Netanyahu, who has, for as much as we dislike him, for as corrupt as we think he is, for as bad a human being as we think he is, has really been able to navigate pretty well up until now. So I guess we're just going to have to wait and see what happens.
You mentioned the way the war is going and what has changed. I think this Mecca treaty is also a sign that these countries no longer look at the United States as the dominant player in the Middle East.
I agree.
And so, as we've said before, the United States doesn't hold elective office in the world. It led things because people believe that it led things. And once they stop believing it, we stop leading it. And that has happened now. And this treaty is a surefire sign that these countries are looking, just like Europe has declared that they have to look after themselves in NATO. that they could see a NATO without a United States dominating it, that they need to step up their arms to oppose whatever Putin's planning next, which looks like it might be an attack on Poland. That the Middle Eastern countries are also saying, you know what, we've had the guarantee of the United States to protect us for all this time, and we believed it, but it turns out that it's not true. They've blown through their missiles. Their bases are decimated. We have no idea what the casualties are because Trump is so non-transparent. We have no idea. These bases are basically sitting ducks right now. They don't have their radar. The Iranians learn from us, take out the radar, take out the defenses, and you can do whatever you want to do. We did it to them last year. They're doing it to us now all through the Middle East, and they're pounding away in the Strait of Hormuz. Sank another 2 ships yesterday. They are making it clear, no matter what Trump says, that they are in control there and that there is no place for the United States in the Middle East. And these countries have just affirmed that. And between Pakistan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, other countries will join.
Oh, yeah.
That is classic bandwagoning. And we've seen what happens when countries, I mean, NATO is a miracle that they've never had to, except for that brief period after 9/11 when NATO came together in Afghanistan. They've never had to fight a war in Europe because they were able to contain the Soviet threat and the Russian threat. Whether that holds now is unclear, and bandwagoning tends to lead to more bandwagoning. Is it possible that Iran will have Iraq, Syria, Lebanon as part of their Shia crescent that they've talked about, and actually had for a while, thanks to George W. Bush getting rid of, as it turned out, Saddam Hussein. Getting rid of Saddam Hussein meant that Iraq was now a Shia country, beholden to Iran, no longer independent, no longer Sunni-led. Syria, we don't know. I mean, the leader of Syria was a former Al-Qaeda guy, which kind of indicates to me that he's a Sunni Muslim. So maybe he'll resist. Maybe he'll join this coalition at some point. But once you start bandwagoning and people start picking sides, it only takes a small spark to set off a conflagration that really, encompasses most of the world.
Yeah. And we have to remember that when NATO was created, it was created to contain the Soviet Union. And if this is created, it is meant to contain Israel. That's its purpose. They're not worried about the United States. They're not worried about the Russians. They're not worried about the Chinese. They're not worried about anybody else. This is meant to contain one very tiny country in their neighborhood. That's all it's there for. And like I said, we don't know. This is something that I will say this to anybody listening. Keep an eye on this. Keep a very close eye on this, because this could have major ramifications if this was to come to pass. And as Scott said, we might not only have one, we might actually have a second one where it's divided by Shia and Sunni. And good luck to the region then. You think we got problems? Boy, we're really going to have problems. All right.
And I'm not going to ask for prediction of whether what the percentages that you think this might happen for each.
No predictions. And that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We want to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing team, Apple Podcasts, the largest source of podcast and music online, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio. your destination for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. And most importantly, we want to thank you, our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society could not be possible. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing on the platform of your choice. It's easy, it's free, and helps our channel grow. For questions or comments, you can reach us at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So on behalf of Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershworth, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power of society is knowledge. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Phoenix Research Group, an independent research consortium dedicated to providing solutions to social and political issues for NGOs and international government agencies. Through multidisciplinary, nonpartisan, and unbiased research, the Phoenix Research Group advances understanding and practical strategies for complex challenges. The Phoenix Research Group is a division of the Phoenix Research Institute, the producer of the Nova Society podcast.